Call to order the Lowell City Council Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024 at 7:01. Roll call, please.
Mayor Bennett.
Here.
Councilor Stratus.
Present.
Councilor Murray.
Here.
Harris and Weathers absent.
We do have a quorum. Stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We have a pretty easy agenda tonight. Does anybody want to add anything that they see? Mr. Colley, you want to speak to anything before we get going, or are you ready to go?
Ready to go.
Okay. Okay, first thing up, we have a presentation, if you want to come on up, sit here, by Representative Conrad. Mayor, thank you for coming.
Yeah, my pleasure. Appreciate you guys making time for me on the agenda and being here. And so again, my name is Representative Charlie Conrad for House District 12. And similar, same thing as what I did last time after the long session, coming around talking about the legislature, what we did in this short session and looking forward a little bit. And so I've got a number of things. I'll try to be light on the bill numbers and more on topics, but whatever you guys want to get into, happy to do it. I was up with Buzz Fergie last night and had some conversations about a couple of the things, particularly 4002, which is measure 110 fix. So happy to get in as much detail. And if you guys are bored, just give me the cut sign and I'll move along to a different topic. So let me know what works for you guys. So one of the things that I want to just touch base on, because it's been a while since I presented to the council, just some of the committees that I'm on as a reminder, and some of the other groups that I'm a part of as well, because that plays into some of the bills and things I'll talk about. So the committees that I'm on, it's on judiciary, behavioral health and healthcare, emergency management, vets and general government, that's all one committee, and then the public safety, ways and means. So we look at the budget side of the public safety sector. And then some of the other groups that I'm involved with that I've been appointed to for PNWR, Pacific Northwest Economic Region, which is an international group of the Northwest US and Western Canada, looking at economic transportation, minerals, mining, natural resources between the two regions. Treated as one big region. Also on the Juvenile Justice Policy Commission, the Juvenile Interstate Compact, modernizing grants and contracts task force. I was fortunate enough to be on the Measure 110 budget work group, and so looking at the behavioral health side of the Measure 110 conversation that we had. And the other things that I participate in, I'm a member of the Water Caucus, and one of the things that we were able to do as part of that Water Caucus is to get funding for cities. So that's how, as part of that, able to advocate for Crestwell and Cottage Grove, get money for some of their infrastructure projects. Then also a member of the Veterans Caucus, and in that caucus, we're able to get funding for the Roseburg Veterans Home. You know, that's been ongoing for 15 years, and we were able to get the state to put up their share of it. So now the federal side had to do their allocations for that too. So happy with all of those things. For this session, we were limited as members to 2 bills. Is all we could submit. During the long session, we could have unlimited bills. And then there were 3 bills that each policy committee could also submit. So there were some limitations that could, again, it's a 35-day session. And just a few numbers. On the House side, we had 180 measures that were submitted, and some measures because there's some joint resolutions or memorial resolutions, those kind of things, in addition to the bills. And we had 71 of those passed both houses, so passed both the House and the Senate. And comparatively to what we did in the long session, we had 1,758 measures submitted in the House, of which 360 passed both houses. And then on the Senate side for this session, they had 111 measures submitted, and 62 of those passed both houses. And comparing them to the long session, they had 1,212 that were submitted, and 293 passed both houses. So you can see, you know, almost 10% of the workload, but in a very compressed amount of time. So a lot of conversations and a lot of activity. It was a lot of fun. A few high level comments, just kind of observations. Again, this is my first short session that I've been through. And I will tell you that from my went through the first time, not really having a comparative, but it was really incredibly bipartisan in terms of the legislature, the conversations that we had. And some of the bills that we passed, some of the significant bills that we passed, that I'll touch on in a little bit, they were passed because of how we worked together. So clearly there was some partisan bills that went through. Not everything was agreed upon. But even, talking to folks that are senior in the legislature, they said it's one of the most bipartisan and working legislatures that they've been a part of. So that a number of my colleagues share those same sentiments. And I will mention that one of the last thing that we did is we voted in now Speaker Fahey. So if you remember, the former Speaker Rayfield is running for Attorney General. So he stepped down at the end of the session and we voted in Speaker Fahey. So the fact that we've got the Speaker of the House that is in our regional delegation is a good thing. So for folks that don't know, Speaker of the House is arguably the second most powerful elected position in the state because all budget bills emanate from the House. And there is nothing that passes through the House that doesn't at least have the Speaker's tacit approval. No bills, no committee assignments, no appointments, no anything. So same thing on the Senate side with the Senate President. And then again, you have the governor. So those are the three individuals throughout the state that have absolute veto power for anything to pass. So, and, personally, I like Representative Fahey. We work well together. And so, I'm happy that she's got that position, that spot. And so moving on, starting smaller with a few of the things that I did, a few of the district things, and moving on to some of those bigger conversations. So the two bills that I submitted, the first one is House Bill 4043. And it was the one that I submitted also in the long session, and it's tightening up the animal abuse laws. And it failed in the long session because it died in Ways and Means. So I cut all that out. So it didn't go through Ways and Means, it just went through the policy committees. And it was signed by the governor on March 27th. So excited that made it through. The second bill, which I'll talk about, I'll get as in depth as you want, because it's still a little bit raw because it passed, but it didn't pass the way that I wanted it to. As House Bill 4056. And this was a bill that the Association of Oregon Counties asked me to run for them because it's a fix to the Tyler versus Hennepin case. And that is a US Supreme Court case dealing with property tax foreclosures. And what they said is that counties cannot keep excess proceeds after they foreclose on a property and retain the monies that they're due, all their costs, the back taxes. Some of those back taxes also go to cities because it's property tax. Anything over and above that, counties were retaining. The US Supreme Court said you can't do that. That's now takings. And so this bill was to put our state within, alignment with that. And so if you want to talk about property tax foreclosure, happy to do it. I leave that to what your interest level is in that. Go ahead.
So you said you were happy it passed, but not the way it went?
It was what I tried and worked hard to negotiate. It did not, I was not able to negotiate the terms that I wanted. And it ended up passing. So the bill was assigned to the Revenue Committee, which is chaired by Representative Nathanson. And she worked with me on this. I was unable to get the parties to agree. I had significant opposition. There was a lot of support, a lot of opposition. And I was able to come up with a compromise. I can get into those details if you want. Rep. Nathanson was, as the chair of the committee, she was able to negotiate where the Department of Revenue will now facilitate all the stakeholders coming together, coming up with an agreement, and then it'll come back in the long session. So there are two aspects from what I was able to negotiate that remained in the final bill that got passed. I checked it before coming over here, and it has not been signed by the governor yet. I anticipate it will be. I don't think it's not going to be. But the two things that stayed in there, the first one is the whole property tax foreclosure process is a 6-year process. And at that very end of that 6 years is when the property deed is transferred to the county. And upon transference of that deed to the county, all liens are foreclosed on, they're done. So no lien holders get paid at that point in time. So because one of the opposition groups were the lien holders that I was unable to negotiate with to come up with a compromise, counties will no longer, I don't think it's passed, will no longer be transferring the deeds to them. So that means that if there's a property in the city of Lowell that is part of the foreclosure process, it will not be transferred to the county, so the property owner will still have that. So whereas the property would transfer to the county would go through their process, go through a disposition. If they're, as they go through that, they dispose of the property, The city would then get those proceeds that were due to the city, bringing back taxes and any fines, fees, anything like that. That won't happen for now, except the other part that is in there is that there is another statute which allows counties to foreclose a little bit earlier on properties that are abandoned and or they have waste. We kept that exemption in there so that if you have a nuisance property in the city, has waste, it needs cleanup, it needs something, the counties will still be able to transfer that over to them.
So you said the property owners still hold the title?
Yes. Yep.
So that needs to become accessible.
The liens will still hold on there. So the way that the property tax foreclosure works is you can be in arrears for your taxes for 3 years. Then the county will file with the court and they'll get a judgment against that property. That starts with a 2-year redemption process. And at any point in that 6 years, anybody can pay the property taxes and bring the account up to balance where it's at, including lien holders. And so what the county won't be doing, so that whole process continues. The deed just won't be transferred to the county. So the original property owner will still owe the taxes. Interest will still be accruing on their tax accounts. All those things will be going at any point in time. They can sell the property, they can, the lien holder can do anything that they want. All those things will still happen, except for that transfer. So then we changed nothing earlier on in that process. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Did you have something, Jim?
Well, so I'm just trying to understand, so previously during that process of foreclosing, there's a point before the foreclosure process where the county's able to get title to the property, is that how it worked previously?
The county can take the deed after 6 years, after that second year of the redemption period is when the deed gets transferred. And that's what that court judgment does. It basically sets the stage for that transference of deed after that redemption period.
Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah, and then that starts a whole new process of disposition of the property, their current statutes of what they can dispose of, how they can dispose of it, all the fees and everything they can collect, how they can disperse, monies to the cities and all the special districts and everything else. Again, I get into a lot more detail. Okay, let me know, we can come back
I
to
can
it.
tell you enjoy it.
I had some long days. So that was the second bill. So getting on the other thing that we did, and again, Lowell was fortunate enough to get on the capital projects list at the end of the short session. Nothing came to Lowell for this one, unfortunately. But just as a reminder, when we go for those capital project funds, it's a competitive process. There are 60 of us in the House, 30 in the Senate. We're all vying for the funds, and in the short session, there's really not a whole lot. So the money that comes from the short session comes from the state rebalance. So any monies that didn't get spent kind of get rebalanced, reshuffled, and then we had a little bit slightly better economic forecast. So there was some money that we could use to get into what we call the Christmas tree bill, but also some of the other projects that we'll talk about as well. And just to help with the competitive side of it, when we had a forum in Eugene with our regional delegation, Speaker Fahey said she did the calculations, and the requests were 10 times more than what was available. So there were a lot of projects throughout the state that did not get funded, and some get funded, but they just don't get funded to the level that they asked for. And the other part that I want to make sure that everybody knows, I always like to talk about how do we actually work. And so I'll try to pass on information on how the building actually works. We, as a regional delegation, most of us, we get together beforehand and we talk about the projects. We bounce them off. We want to support wherever we can. And there's one project in particular that there is split on support, but we don't want to compete against each other. And we try to divvy it up, try to look at the projects, and try to support each other where we can. So we really work together on getting the projects funded and trying to advocate for them. And as you might recall, the focus of this session, there were a number of pots of money that we were looking at. The first one that I alluded to earlier, whereas on the work group, was for shovel-ready behavioral health facilities. And when I say shovel-ready, really is shovel-ready. It's the last money in type scenario. It's if we get all this, we're good to go. It's not if we get this, well, then we'll keep working on it for the next 5 years. One of the projects that fit this bill that is very supportive of was in Klamath Falls. They've been working on getting their funding for a rehab facility for 7 years. They needed 2.5 million, and we got them that 2.5 million. So I think it's about a $12 million project. But they had federal funds, they had private funds, nonprofit funds, private donations. They've been working hard, and they just couldn't get this last two, and we got it to them through this facility. So the whole idea for these shovel-ready projects, expanding capacity for the behavioral health system in Oregon, which we haven't invested in 20 years. So it's been a couple decades, and so we're going to try to catch up. This is just a very first step, and it's going to have to be in every session thing that we do. The other part that we're bucket of money that we're looking at and housing that we're looking at is housing and housing tangent projects. Trying to build that capacity work we do, and so there's a bucket of money for that. And with that, there's also, city and community infrastructure projects that we're looking for. And I think Oregon City sent out some requests, trying to gather some projects. I think my office reached out to everybody just to try and, get all the LOC projects so that we're aware of them, but also what else do you have available for us that we can actually advocate for and might be ready to go. And so the projects that we were able to get funded, I was fortunate, we got 5 projects funded in the district between all of these buckets of money. We got 900,000 to upgrade the Mirror Mountain Communications Tower, which is, down in Creswell Cottage Grove area, and also by 100 radios for emergency management. So again, this district, as you guys well know, emergency management is huge, both summertime and wintertime. So the fact that we're actually able to upgrade communications is big. Happy to get that one. I was also able to get $1 million for Junction City for one of their well projects that they need. They had a couple of well projects they were asking. We got funded for one. Unfortunately, Covert, they've got a water tank that they wanted funds for. We didn't get it. So the other one that I alluded to, we got $1 million for Creswell for their wastewater plant, their water treatment plant down there. Got $3 million for Cottage Grove for a water infrastructure project. They've got some housing, they've got some property that they're going to build some houses on, trying to get about 500 plus homes there. So they asked for 4.5. This bucket of money was capped at 3, so we just got them 3 of that 4.5, heading towards that project. And the final one that we got came from the behavioral health side. And this was, we got $4 million for the Bland family treatment, so they can build a medical detox and residential facility. So as part of that group, Senator Brzezinski was also on that work group looking at it. It was the first time that I've been involved in a group kind of behind the scenes, evaluating the projects, ranking them, being part of that. And it was great to be able to advocate for, and I focused on youth and juveniles. That's one of the reasons why I was asked to be on that work group. And then also for rural communities. So with that, we were able to get, 300,000 to Wallowa County. Wallowa County, 300,000 is huge. So we were able to get money for one of their projects. We got money from Coos Bay. So some of the smaller rural counties where a little bit is a huge deal, we're able to spread the money throughout the state. Baker County got some projects funded. There's a tri-county area, Wasco, Sherman, and the other one that they have a regional facility that they got funded as well. So the money for this bucket really was spread throughout the state for those shovel-ready projects. So very, very happy about that. Some of the projects that were on my list that I didn't get funding for, and the first one is the one that surprises me most. I thought this was the highest likelihood. Westford asked for $600,000 for new city hall and fire station. That didn't get funded, and that was the top priority on my list. I thought that had the highest likelihood. So unfortunately, that didn't get funded. So I'll keep working with them to see how we can get that going in the future.
Who was that for?
Westford. I mentioned Johnson City, their other well didn't get funded. Coburg had the tank rehab that didn't get funded. $4.5 million for Blue River wastewater. Again, they still have wastewater issues. They got some money a few years ago. It wasn't enough, given that they've got the water, the surface connection, or the hydrological connection between the surface water and the river is too high. So they've got to do something different than what they were originally planning. Also up in Blue River, have you guys heard of the river? Has that project come to you? The river, it is basically a concert hall, amphitheater, community gathering point, all of that they're trying to put up there to help with economic recovery and to do a lot of good things. So that's $4.5 million that they asked for. They just wanted something because they're also looking for a lot of federal funding as well. That didn't get funded. And then the other one, Robert Fire Response, they were the other group that I got money for last time. they're looking to, get now money for their fire station is what they were looking for. And I think part of the reason why they probably didn't get funded is they go on the ballot in May. That district is gonna be on the May ballot, so maybe some other point in time we'll be able to get this money to help them actually with that facility. So those are all the capital projects. Any questions about that? Go ahead.
I might be misremembering our last visit with you, but I think you talked about hoping in the long session for funding for Oak Ridge's airport for emergency response, especially during fire season. I'm wondering, because you didn't bring it up, did they find funding in other ways, or has something changed about that?
They are, so Oregon Department of Aviation, they have put in for a number of grants. And I heard from their director last week, week before, and they're still hopeful that they're gonna get the grants. Things are looking good. They've got all the right paperwork in, they've met all the timelines. And so they're looking right now at some of the federal grants. They also put in for a state grant as a backup, but the federal grant is what they're really trying to push for. So I will certainly let everybody know if they're looking to bring that to fruition, but they wrote a great grant application. And I think there were 30 of us that sent letters of support for both the state, the local, and the federal delegation.
You were so passionate about it last time. I was just curious.
Yeah, no, I still am. I still am. All right, so a couple of the significant bills. I'm gonna grab my water real quick. The first one really is one of the ones that took up most of the headlines, at least prior to session, even a little bit after. House Bill 4002. So this was the fix for Measure 110. And I will go again into as much detail as you'd like with this one. And the way that this came about was negotiated in the building was there were a lot of parties, a lot of people, you know, it was the speaker's office, so all the leaders, majority leader, minority leader, a lot of the interest and advocacy groups that had a lot of these meetings over time to try and come up with this. And there was a lot of back and forth. My caucus, House Republican caucus, we were all solid that we wanted an 8 misdemeanor. So the recriminalization side, we wanted to go to an 8 misdemeanor. Particularly, you know, Senate Majority Leader Lieber, who was one of the lead folks negotiating this, they started off at that C misdemeanor because there are a lot of folks that still don't want it to be recriminalized. They want it decriminalized. And I checked, this was signed yesterday by the governor. And so they started off at that C misdemeanor. We held really solid on the A misdemeanor because that's what we really believe. And my personal, one of the reasons why I held so strong on that is, again, coming from my background and then everything that I've done in the interim with behavioral health, addiction, we need as many doors as we can for folks. And so if this is one way that we can catch some people and get them into treatment, let's do it. It's not going to work for everybody. It's not intended to work for everybody, but let's open this door and then we can look for other doors to open. The other thing is this is a way for our police officers to help out that community, keep other people safe. This is another opportunity for public safety and we need this. And so that's why I supported that A misdemeanor side for those couple of reasons. What ended up being negotiated is an unclassified misdemeanor. Unclassified misdemeanors have been out there for a while. When I was with the city of Springfield, a lot of our city ordinances were just unclassified misdemeanors, meaning it's a crime, but there's this, and you could always arrest somebody for it, but basically it's just a fine for the most part. But they came up with a redefined an unclassified misdemeanor for this purpose for possession of small amounts of narcotics or drugs. And they came up with, you know, basically it's a 3-phase process. And some of the negotiations and conversations were going back and forth, but it's voluntary, is it mandatory, what are you gonna do, how's it gonna work? And so they came up with the deflection program. Some of the conversation was what is a deflection program, how does it actually work, what do we model it off of? And so with it being an unclassified misdemeanor and with the penalties in it, there is enough, the term of art is governmental interest for a police officer to actually stop somebody and arrest them. When it was a C misdemeanor, which was the first, you know, out of the gate negotiating point, there was not enough governmental interest for a police officer to go talk to somebody for a small amount of narcotics and risk being assaulted, resisting arrest, all the other bad things that can happen when police contact somebody. Why are you going to do that? Precipitate an incident doesn't need to be precipitated to begin with. So The penalty now makes it so that we've got a government order, so police officers and police departments now have an interest in actually go stopping and talking to people because the penalty is on the back end. So the deflection is the first part of that. Basically, it is a pre-conviction. Think of it similar to Dewey diversion. It's a pre-conviction diversion where people can enter that program to go into treatment to do all the right things. And if they do it, then things go away. If they don't do that, or if they decide they don't want to, then the next one, it is a conditional discharge. So it actually goes to the district attorney's office. That's a little bit harsher now. The district attorney gets involved. They've got some tools and things that they can hopefully get people in the treatment. So it's step 2. If people fail that conditional discharge process, then it actually goes to the court, and the maximum penalty is up to 180 days in jail. And then there are sanction units. There are 90 sanction units. So if somebody actually ends up being convicted and goes to probation, they violate the probation, they can actually go spend time in a jail cell for that. So that's the process. And because all this is new, it's going to take money. It's going to take time for all the different counties to come up with the process. And again, as with most of our areas, staffing, workforce shortages, funding, all the processes. So there's going to be a lot of time, a lot of money and effort and energy to try and get to this process to make it work. So my approach, even though this is not what I would consider ideal, I wanted things a little bit more defined, a little bit sharper. My approach is always, this is what we're doing, let's do the best that we can. So that way we can identify where our key performance metrics, what should we be looking at, and then on the public safety ways and means. Okay, what are we looking at? Does DOC have enough money? Do the DAs have enough money? What about the public defenders? Because those are all the entities that we look at. Do our courts have enough money as well? Because they don't. We don't have enough judges, we don't have enough courts. But at least in the budget side of things, we can ask the right questions, try to make it work. And if it doesn't work, well, then we can actually have some data and some information why it didn't work. We know whatever that next iterative process is going to be. So any questions on 4002? Was that too much information? Is that all right?
No, they're fine.
Okay. The next big one we had is Senate Bill 1537, which is the housing bill. There's a lot in there. There are a lot of different components to the housing bill. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to get your head into it yet or not. One of the things that I supported both of these when it came to the floor. The housing bill, one of the concerns that I still have, and again, trying to be optimistic, look at it and see if I'm just wrong and see if it actually works. But it's the Housing Accountability and Production Office. It's a new agency that is being set up to help with the housing crisis. And it's got some good things. It's got some grant responsibilities. It's got some efficiency things to get the builders to get their permits, to get some of those kind of things. You guys may be aware that Lane County itself, not City of Lowell, Lane County itself has a very difficult land use and building program to get permits and a lot of time lags. So hopefully it helps out with some of this. My concern, one of the reasons that I was skeptical about this, I don't want another LUBA. I don't want a LUBA light. I don't want more administrative burdens into this process that are already burdensome and burdensome on administration of local governments. Because now somebody, if they can appeal to them, now you got to collect all the paper, all the documents, everything you have to go just to get ready to go through another appeals process. So that's why I'm very hesitant. I want to see if it works. I hope it works, but we'll see. So that was 1537. There are a number of different things in there. One of the big things, I don't know if it impacts Lowell as much. 1576 contains the direct community fix. Are you guys familiar with the issues that we have with direct community and the past? I think you certainly are. So this is the fix. Unfortunately, it is only 1 year. We're going to be talking about this again in 25. The powerful opposition on the other side, it's the trial lawyers. They want to sue cities, they want to sue deep pockets. So we've got to figure out what can we do with this long-standing statutes that we've had for a long time that got overturned by what my opinion is a bad court decision. Now we've got to tackle this, and hopefully we can make it better for all of our recreation providers, federal, state, cities. Oak Ridge and Westford were certainly impacted by that, and they reached out to me a number of times trying to get this fixed. So we got it fixed for now, but it's certainly going to be a long-term conversation, long session conversation. One of the other things that of interest that came about, and one of the tightest ones in the nation, first in the nation for this, is the right to repair bill. So I did support this one as well. The biggest group that came out against is Apple. I found Apple's testimony to be unconvincing. Particularly in listening to their Senate testimony. Senator Golden asked a great series of questions. So there are 3 parts of the bill. particularly with parts pairing that Apple was contesting. And Senator Golden said, do you guys do this now? The answer was no. Do you do this now? The answer was no. Do you do this now? The answer was no. Well, if you don't do it now, then why are you absolutely opposed to it? And now the federal government's suing the Apple as well for some monopolistic behavior. So that's out there. My hope is that, you know, with this, now we've got folks that want to start businesses doing some repairs. It's a little bit easier on them. And I always go for a strong economy. If we got folks that are innovative, they want to come up with some technology and some things, some way to improve this. Yeah, let's do it. My take is I want Apple to fight for me to be their customer. I don't want to be their customer because that's just the easiest thing to do. Fight for me. So part of why I supported that. One of the other things that bills that came up from the regional delegation that I was happy to support and co-chief sponsor was Rep. Nathanson's bill that addressed the hole left by the closure of the University District Hospital. So as they close now, all the hospitals are in Springfield, McKinsey, and Riverbend. They left a big hole there. So even though they've got some community clinics, I think it might be an urgent care. Her bill had a number of things to address this. One of them is just simply because now the fire department has to drive across the river to Riverbend or McKinsey. It takes some more time. So there's $1 million to fund an ambulance crew for a year because it takes an extra 20 minutes each way, basically, to drop patients off. And then all the time that they have at the hospital. Eugene Springfield Fire, they had an older ambulance, that's what they're using. So this is just to get that crew there so they can keep actually ambulances running in the city and not have them tied up for all that extra time. So always happy to support that. The other part that I'm really excited about is there's an innovation fund that was created out of this. And one of the things that was talked about quite a bit is how can we change how healthcare is delivered? So instead of people having to go to the hospital, is there a way that we can actually have medical assistants come to people? So whether it is certified folks that are riding around in an ambulance or something akin to cahoots, or is it now that when somebody calls 911, 911 says this is not an emergency, let me transfer you to actually a nurse, and they can do some call center triaging by a nurse that may or may not be physically in this region, which is great for the emergency management. We had the ice storm. We had a lot of communications issues. So if there's somebody at home with a slip or fall or somebody needs assistance that might not be an emergency, let's actually get them to talk to a medical professional. So that's why I'm really excited about this, is because the implications that we can do for emergency management and also for the rural communities. So folks that live 45 minutes away from Riverbend don't have to drive that far, and you don't have to drive that far and then wait 4 hours because, you know, the ER is backed up, which is what happened after the ice storm. Everybody that had slip and falls, all of our community clinics were closed. They couldn't get employees in there, same reason why patients couldn't get in there, and they had no power. So immediately after, there's a glut of people going to the ER room that weren't always emergency level visits, but there was enormous long wait times to do that. So how do we handle that better than what we can? So that's why I'm excited about that. So I always try to give people credit where credit's due, and Rep. Nathanson did a great job. She had a lot of meetings with all the stakeholders involved with that. And I think she came up with a great goal, and I'm excited to see where we can take some of this. One of the other ones on the public safety side that I want to mention, it didn't get as much press time, but from the public safety side and from the victim side, I think it is a great bill. Representative Mannix, it's great having him in the caucus, because with his time in the legislature in the mid-90s and again in the early 2000s, all the work, he has so much history about the bills that we have and how to update them and redo them. And this is one that he did in the mid-90s. It's a stalking bill. So this is House Bill 4156, and we re-upped it. So we included all the new technology, so air tags, all the things that stalkers use to keep track of their victims and torment their victims. Now it is actually against the crime. Now it still fits under that stalking, whereas before it was a gray area because in the 90s we didn't have all this technology. So the simple fact that we can help victims of stalking that much better and hold the stalkers accountable, to me, it's a great bill. So that was Rep. Mannix. So again, hats off to him. And you know, there were a bunch of victims of stalking that came and testified. And there were some folks that really did a great job and worked hard to bring this to fruition. And then the last one that I'll mention is House Bill 4024, which is campaign finance reform. You know, first time in 49 years that we've got limitations on campaign limitations. It doesn't take full effect until 27. It's staged in until the 27 campaign cycle, but it sets limits on, you know, contributions from different organizations, depending on type of organizations, on individuals, all things. So that was another big thing that was going into the session, was not at the top of my mind, and campaign finance reform has always been percolating out there. But because there's some citizen initiative petitions that were out there, it made this happen and brought everybody together. Again, this really was the bipartisan effort on that. One of the things that I'll mention that did not pass, that is kind of mixed. It's House Bill 4130, which is the healthcare modernization bill, the corporatization bill. And this is one that Rep. Bowman out of Tiger was running. His office is next to mine. I talked to him a lot about that. He and I are both on the healthcare committee. And it was a tough one because the way that the healthcare system in Oregon is currently looking and nationwide is there are a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and there's a lot of private equity that is now coming into the state, and they're going to be dictating the healthcare that people get. I have serious concerns about a publicly traded company that answers to shareholders dictating how a doctor's going to be able to treat a patient in the office. We've seen this in another sector with pharmacy benefit managers. I don't know if I've talked to you guys about that at all, if you're familiar with pharmacy benefit managers, but the pharmacy benefit manager system is now vertically integrated, where you have an insurance company that owns the PBM, that owns a specialty pharmacy. The insurance company directs the PBM to direct people to that pharmacy. So all the money stays in that vertically integrated chain. And there are just a few companies that control basically 80% of that market in the United States. So healthcare is going that way. There have been some high profile conversations. Corvallis Clinic is being taken over by Optum, which is one of these very large publicly traded companies that have all these different elements to it. So I absolutely support the concept of redoing our medical corporatization act because we need to have it. We need to protect patients and the ability for doctors to actually deliver that healthcare that patients deserve. I voted no on this bill for one simple reason. The medical establishment was divided on it. Doctors I heard from, medical practitioners in the county that were for, and those that were against. That was true statewide. The one thing we couldn't really get the words on paper to match, at least for my thoughts, and this died in the Senate. Representative Lowell was able to negotiate a 7-year runway of what to do with existing businesses. Give them 7 years to reorganize. That's the toughest thing, is what is the state's right to tell an existing corporation you have to reorganize after they may have been in existence for so long? That's the difficult part. I don't have an easy answer to that. We're working with Representative Bowman on this, keeping in touch with them as we go through the process. But for me, that's that last sticking point. What are we going to do with existing corporations? So I'm just going to grandfather them in. Is it a longer window? Is there something that's going to happen? So, getting private equity into healthcare, a lot of people have concerns that because in essence, in order the ownership of the company had to stay 51% doctors, private equity could only be 49%. Right now, you can have private equity own the whole thing if they want to. So, the other concern that a lot of folks have is if private equity can only get 49% of the company, are they actually going to invest? What amount of money? Because we need private equity to still be circulating throughout our economy. That's what helps generate growth and opportunities and different things. So finding those balances are going to be critical going forward. And then the last thing I'll talk about is preparing for 25. This kind of comes a little bit, I think, what you were asking. 25 right now is going to be the transportation session. So everybody's gearing up for transportation, talking about transportation. Clearly, as I talked about, we're going to have a lot of other issues that are what we always talk about. We'll be back on this 2000 bills and all those kind of things with different topics. So right now I'm collecting and learning about the transportation projects, and as best I can, trying to get the projects advanced enough so that we can take advantage of whatever opportunities come out of what that looks like. So clearly in Lane County, covered bridges are a thing. The county's already approached me about that. How do we get money from covered bridges? Because they're very expensive to do the repairs. The other one, Coburg interchange with I-5. I've got a meeting Friday about that one. At Crestwell is the jog. So if you like to go to the Crestwell Bakery like I do, you know that jog pretty well. They want to do something with that to revitalize downtown, just make traffic more efficient. And then Oak Ridge has contacted me. They're looking at doing different things with Highway 58 as it goes through town. And if nothing else, just getting ADA accessible sidewalks and curb cuts and some better crossings and all those kind of things. So if there are transportation issues, I'm not sure if you guys have a transportation plan or some projects outlined. I don't know where you're at with that. But let me know what you have. for me to really get my head wrapped around it, and start advocating, December is the timeline. When we start doing that, I think, you know, all the other projects, we've gone back and forth, and usually that December, January timeframe. So trying to use that time between now and then to get projects as far as we can, identify what those needs are gonna be, and make sure that there's some transportation money out there, so. That's what I've got. What questions do you have? What can I talk about more?
I have a couple of easy questions. You basically have 140 bills that you passed in the both houses at the short session. And they go to the governor. What percentage has she signed? Is she signing them all, or is it 30 days she has to sign them once she receives them on her desk or something like that? Some reason that piece that comes to mind.
There is a time frame. I think it's longer than 30 days, but there is a time frame. It might be 60 days or 90 days. I don't know of any that she has vetoed. I've been checking them online, just at least for mine as well. In the long session, she vetoed, I think she vetoed 2, and then she did a line item veto for a capital project.
So
So it's very few and far between.
okay, yeah. The other thing, whether I think some discussions we had with you with the Corps of Engineers, things like that, it wasn't anything formal, but there was I think a search to see if the extra chemicals and the overtime that we encountered during the drawdown, if there would be funding coming from the state on that didn't, because we're small potatoes, but the other 2 cities are quite large, and I'm sure they got hit much harder, so nothing came down on that.
No money came from that. Kate's still working on that, trying to get money from the state, and still working on the federal side as well.
Okay.
And once we can get the core, the budget appropriations in the right language, then to reimburse, we can do that. So as long as you have those records, we're still trying to get that money.
Would that be before the next drawdown or into next year, or after the drawdown, more likely? Well, that we know you'd be in session, it'd be in 25.
Yeah, unless we can tie it to some sort of grant or something else comes up.
Okay.
Yeah, it won't be before long session.
Okay.
So they want it.
Nice to know. Yeah.
Walking Apple advertisement, I'm really happy that that bill passed. And I really like that you pointed out you can create business. So I work at the University of Oregon, and it's just a cycle of businesses that start out as licensed Apple repair, and they just can't make it work. The cost is so high, and that's who we work with. So we're constantly finding different vendors that last for a couple months before they have to close. So I really hope that this can revitalize that market and that we can be a leader.
I think so. From my understanding, this is the strictest right to repair bill that we got. It was modeled after California, but it's that parts pairing language that all the other states have crossed off because Apple's been able to fight that. Again, credit where credit's due. This is all because of Senator Solomon and all the work that she did to do this. She went down to California. She's talked to Apple. There was a lot of lobbying going on. I went to all of our offices, fought through it, but ultimately we got it passed. So I am happy we got it as well. But yeah, I talked about merger and acquisitions in the healthcare sector. Merger and acquisition is such a big thing going on in our economy right now that is a concern. And again, I want some of the large corporations to fight for us, earn my business. So hopefully this was a way to get that.
You have anything, Jeremy? Did you like to ask?
Nothing to ask or add. I'll just congratulate our peer communities for the funding that they got for their projects. Sounds like some very important infrastructure that they'll be working on. So that's, just congratulate them in your office on helping.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's great. And you'll be part of the water caucus. This is what we talk about. And there's certainly recognized need. So I know Lowell put in for and has a number of water projects and a number of housing projects. We'll keep advocating, trying to find the money. And again, as we keep going forward with this, we'll find something.
I've been on the council for a number of years, and this is the most detailed feedback about a session that I've heard in all that time. You know, maybe a short clip or something like that, maybe an email but to go into detail like you did, this is the first time. But I appreciate that.
Yeah, welcome. And as always, you know, this is my second time doing it. want to provide information that you guys find interesting and useful. So if I'm not hitting the mark, or if you have other questions, let me know. But feedback one way or the other, so we can keep doing this. I'm happy to keep
I don't
doing
know
these
where you're going,
conversations.
even if it doesn't impact us.
Or even if it, I especially appreciate that you talked about that it's gonna be a transportation focus, because we have talked about safety and transportation and kind of come up with city concerns that I think we can find that and pass that along. Just thinking about our walkway corridors, but knowing what you're already thinking about can help us tailor our feedback to you.
Yeah,
So that's very helpful.
that works. And as that conversation progresses, if I start kind of hearing how money is gonna be divvied up and what buckets of money are gonna be out there, I'll let you guys know. So again, if that helps form your conversations, figure out how we can take advantage of it.
Yeah, we have safe routes to school, help us close to schools, but, when you get out in the community, there's no sidewalks or anything like that for the biggest part of the town, so that would be, I know it would, I don't know if we have the money to spend to get a, package put together, but it would be, to our benefit.
Do you currently have any of those projects on your CIP or transportation plan?
We do have a street plan. The street plan is from 1998. But we do have an updated pavement preservation plan
Okay,
that is a little more detailed and where our engineer analyzed areas that need to be repaired and ranked them.
okay. Yeah, whatever we need to do to start talking about that, because that's certainly one of the also issues in Cottage Grove. I think their PCI is like 55 or something. That's pretty low. They've got a number of areas. So, you know, if we can get money for some of the pavement, let's work on that too.
We're county, county's our road provider. We, state highways over there on the other side of the lake, so as for state type funding and things like that, we really don't, see the, input of money. But, it would be good if we, something along those lines.
Okay.
I'm thinking about our, we have these two recreational areas, there's no footpath to get to them.
Yeah.
So we're right here, but there's no safe way, so people just kind of crawl along the edges of the causeway to get to the covered bridge, which always gives me anxiety, so it's things like that.
Definitely.
Okay.
Okay,
All right. Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
yeah.
Thank you. Wake up my iPad.
Okay, we have a new item on page 3 here. We're looking, at, work order 2024-02 for tag. Oh, go ahead and introduce this.
In March, the council approved an amendment to the master integrator agreement with the automation group. That amendment requires TAG to procure, provides payment and performance bonds. TAG's cost to procure those bonds is $9,916.20, since that's over my spending authority. That's on your agenda for tonight.
Okay. Any questions? So we need to, pay for their bonds before any further work goes forward, or any work goes forward.
It's not holding up the project, but in order for us to be in compliance with the state
Okay,
procurement law, they do need to furnish those bonds to us.
okay. That's good to know.
Jeremy, we don't have to do any kind of budget amendment. We have discretionary funding enough in this fiscal year's budget to cover this. I'm sure we do.
The water fund is revenue projection. I'm projecting that our revenues will be over what we estimate. So the financial condition in the water fund will be better than expected. It may be necessary to have a supplemental budget to cover the cost of this, but as of right now, we have the spending authority to approve this work order.
We have to spend a little bit of what? Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve work order 2024-02 with the automation group, the amount of $9,916.20 to authorize the city administrator to sign.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Jimmy. Motion to approve the work order 2024-02. Other question, discussion? All those in favor of motion to approve work order 2024-02 with the automation group in the amount of $9,916.20 are authorized the city administrator to sign, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, it carried. Okay. I don't see any other business. I have no comments and
I got a small comment. Last meeting I brought up, about possibly renaming the Shakers program to Paul Reagan's memory. I didn't present that to Jeremy as an agenda item for tonight because I kind of want to run through a little bit more about what that means. I don't just want it to be just a name. I'm thinking about some kind of, memorial sign, something that makes it more of a permanent thing. So, but that's, I don't want to let that drop off our maybe a short term, something we look at, maybe after the budget year turns over or something. So,
Can you help? I mean,
yeah.
so Hall Fisher Park, Hall Reagan Playground.
No, the shade tree program itself, so I was thinking, the Hall Reagan Memorial Shade Tree Program might be the title.
Okay.
And what is some kind of memorial look like for that, size and, structure and verbiage and things, just kind of a layout on it. I think that, that would be a good thing, so.
I agree. I know right now they're collecting money for the swing set, so I don't know if they want to give it a bit of a spacing between the swing set and doing his. I think he was such a power factor in it, but people's economy now is beating up people a lot, so to come out, month after month and request the money. I don't even know how much a plaque, monument or anything like that would cost, I have no idea. So.
Yeah, I think it's materials. I mean, we know in brass, you can go plastic, or is there visuals in it? There's a lot of colors, is it big, is it steel? I mean, there's a lot of variables that can change the cost on it. I'm also not stuck on the Hall Reagan Shade Tree Program. If somebody else thinks of something, because Hall was all for the parks in general, not just the Shade Tree Program. I think somebody else proposed that. I don't want to take credit for somebody else's idea. I don't remember the individual's name on social media, but I thought it was a good idea. But Hall did definitely spearhead that in the recent history. So it makes sense.
No, I think it's a good idea. Might talk to Martini or Moritzi or one of them on the Parks Committee and have them put together something, bring it back to us. I think the council would support it, so I don't see an issue with that, where the funding's gonna be that. But if it's not an exorbitant amount, I think we could,
That's why I think it's better maybe wait for after the fiscal year turns. I think we're just too close to the end of the year now to throw something else in there. I'm afraid we wouldn't put the thought into it that we would, versus the beginning of the budget cycle. So
you can put a nugget out for them to think about. Sometimes they're not real quick. Right now, they're still working on the caboose and on the swing set, so
it's
it's just up on their agenda to start thinking about. Oh, it's a good idea, I support it. I think it's a good idea. Anything else? Not hearing anything. We're adjourned at 7:55.
didn't notice anything up efforts.